I want to talk about depression and autistic burnout. And I have so much to say about that I think it's going to have to be multiple videos. So I'd like to just kind of do an introduction and just tell you a little bit about my experience with depression and autistic burnout. So I was diagnosed with depression in my teens, and I have been on and off antidepressants my whole life. I tried lots of SSRIs. None of the SSRIs worked for me. They didn't do anything except for make me sleep like 12 hours a day. And that's not exactly sustainable if you want to work for a living. So um, I didn't do well on those. I tried one, I can't remember the name of it, that was serotonin and norepinephrine, I think Effexor maybe, that gave me the most absolutely vivid and wild dreams. And it still made me sleep a lot, but I was getting a lot of dream activity during that one. It's still, neither one of those helped my depression though. And then I finally tried Wellbutrin, and it seemed to work the best because it closed a lot of those little pop-up windows in my brain. So a lot of the, I guess, negative or intrusive thoughts and that were just not very helpful, it helped close out a lot of those little extra annoying windows. So that was what I was on for most of my adult life, like most of my 30s and part of my 40s. So, and then I was also treated for anxiety with that. I was never, diagnosed officially with generalized anxiety disorder. And at my autism assessment, they confirmed that I didn't have generalized anxiety disorder or any other form of anxiety disorder. I really only get extremely anxious when my sensory input is way too much, and I get overwhelmed by lots of sights, sounds, smells. Just all of the sensory input is where my anxiety comes from, and it's not exactly anxiety, it's sensory overload. I also don't have social anxiety disorder. I'm not crazy about social interactions, but because with that comes, a lot of other stuff. But I was treated for anxiety, and it was always along with the antidepressants. So I can't go back and ask those doctors, were you treating me for side effects of the medication that I was on, or did you think I actually had anxiety? I don't know, because I'd have to like collect some medical records, and I don't think that I need to go to that much trouble just to confirm that I don't have anxiety of that variety. Hey, it rhymed. But anyway, so yeah, I was on medication for anxiety and depression. Yeah, it was just on and off, that I would be okay for a while, and then it was like it would just build up, and I'm like a soda bottle that just gets shaken to the point of, or champagne, whatever, just in the cork pops. And so that's how it would be. I'd be like, okay, like, and then it would just build up and build up and build up, and then I'd go back to, some sort of equilibrium, and then it would build up and build up and build up again. And So that is very consistent with having like multiple periods of burnout and meltdowns and things like that, instead of having a depressive episode exactly. But I did a couple of years ago have what I considered to be my worst depressive episode ever. And this was before my diagnosis. And so it felt like overwhelming grief. Just, it felt like the worst depression of my life, and grief that I couldn't pinpoint a source. And it was just like, I'm not a big fan of the word hope anyway, and I don't want to say anything negative that would affect anyone else and their hope, their levels of hope or anything. But I've always found hope to be very fickle and precarious, and it makes me nervous. So, but at this point in my life, during this depressive episode, which I'm like positive now turned out to be autistic burnout with a side of depression, I had absolutely no hope whatsoever. And I was just going through life like not expecting anything good, really. I wasn't expecting, I wasn't like a doomsday kind of person either. I was just like, reality sucks, man. That kind of thing. And so, but I would wake up and I would lay in bed and I would stare at my ceiling for as long as I could get away with it. If it was a weekend, I could get away with it for a lot longer than I could during the work week. But it was, it was becoming kind of just a morning ritual of laying there and staring at the ceiling. I didn't really see a purpose in anything. And somebody during that time in my life said, this really very intelligent young man, we were having a nice intellectual conversation, and he says, what do you think your purpose is? And I said, to convert oxygen into carbon dioxide for the trees. And he thought I had just had somehow reversed the idea of being carbon neutral or some sort of carbon neutrality thing. And I'm like, no, man, I'm not talking about anything noble. I just mean breathing. That's my purpose. And I'm still pretty set on that, but I'm way more positive about it. Like, breathing is my only purpose. Whereas then I was like, breathing is my only purpose. So either way. But so I just didn't, feel very enthusiastically about anything at all. And through this all, I was trying to feel better. Like, I knew that something was very, very wrong. And I couldn't put my finger on what it was, like what had triggered it. And now that I know I have alexithymia, that makes complete sense, because I have trouble identifying my emotions. And that in itself makes it very difficult for me to set boundaries when I need to set boundaries. And that was a big contributor to that episode of depression and burnout. But not having a good idea about my emotions at that moment, and what exactly, I couldn't pinpoint exactly what had triggered the episode. It made it very extremely difficult to get help, because all of these well-meaning people say, when you're depressed, reach out for help. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. Well, there are so many problems with that for me personally as a late diagnosed autistic woman. Number one, I am hyper independent and I like taking care of everything myself because people have proven to me time and time again that I cannot depend on them. And that's unfortunate, but it's been true for me. I'm not saying that's true for everyone. It has just been my unfortunate circumstance that was the case. So I just learned that if I depend solely on myself, then I can depend on myself. And that was also part of something that was making it very scary, was like suddenly I wasn't I couldn't really depend on myself either 100%. So that was scary. And so another thing about reaching out for help, I hate making phone calls. I hate it. I absolutely despise making phone calls. Phone calls are just almost as bad as fluorescent lighting. So, and I had to make phone calls to try to set up a therapy appointment. So I call all of these therapists and get these 8-month or more long waiting lists. And, I get on a waiting list and, get this one guy refers me to someone else while I'm on the waiting list, just in case I can get into this other lady sooner. And she never calls me back. And so I get totally frustrated with that and left messages that, never got returned. And that really made me have a very negative view on mental health care. And, I'm like, well, people are out here calling you because they're desperate and you won't even return their call. And yet your message is, when you're feeling depressed, reach out for help. We won't answer, but make sure you reach out. So that was that became a big issue, and I built up a little bit of resentment on that one. Can you tell? I just was at a loss after, I'm like, okay, well, I'm reaching out 8 months into the future for help. And so I need something. I was desperate. I was just like, I've got to have something now. I felt like my particles were just losing their bonds. Like I'm just like coming apart at the smallest level. And it was kind of like this humming, buzzing feeling in my body. And I didn't know what to do. So I run miles a week and have for years. I'm vegetarian. I have been for years. I eat eggs and dairy, so I'm not like missing out on those vitamins and all that stuff. So it wasn't a deficiency. I had blood tests done. So, I tried doing yoga, adding that to the mix, and sitting meditation doesn't work for me. So I tried mindful walking with the Plum Village app and YouTube guidance. And I got back on my Wellbutrin after I had been off of it successfully for years. And I was just at the end of my rope. So I decided to reach out to friends and family. And I reached out to a family member with a PhD in psychology first, who's not a practicing counselor currently. He's in higher administration, but I thought, that would be a good place to start. And so I tell him that I am struggling with depression. And he says, "Oh, I'm sorry." And then there was a long, awkward pause. and I didn't know what to do because I hadn't thought past that point of just telling him that bit of information that was excruciatingly hard for me to even come to him with in the first place. So it became a really frustrating experience. And I tell him all of the things that I'm doing. And he says, well, it sounds like you're doing everything you can. And I think to myself, yeah, genius, I'm doing everything I can and it's not working. So, like, that's why I'm here. So that was totally frustrating. And I left there feeling even more agitated and frustrated than I did before I went. And so and I was just like, what was that long pause all about? What? And then I realize now that is the space that a neurotypical person would fill with venting. They would vent and they would tell the other person all of the stuff that they're depressed about. Because a neurotypical person without alexithymia would know why they were depressed. Most likely. I didn't know. I was just like, I feel overwhelming grief and like a total sense of nothingness, other than the grief. And, but after I left there, I had a sense of grief and anger. But anger can be a useful emotion if used correctly. And I did, I think, use my anger correctly. I like to run off my anger. And so I was getting in lots of miles, getting my cardio in and running off my anger, like burning it off. But also just think of running as a faster, mindful walking. So all of the thoughts that I was processing while I'm on the treadmill and coming up with alternative solutions. And so I had started doing video journals when I had an incident occur that I needed to talk about. And I told, my friends about, but I needed to really, really go over it and talk about it over and over and kind of dissect it and analyze. That's it. I needed to overanalyze the event. And in order to do that, I needed to talk it out. And because I tried writing about it, and writing can seem like homework sometimes. So I wrote about it and then I talked about it. And the video journal format really helped me. I thought, well, I can't get in to see a therapist for 8 months, but I can be my own therapist. And so I just started talking to myself. And so I would do a little video therapy session and I would watch it like the next day. Or if I needed more time, I could just, think about it and it would be there. And I could just go back and address things and find patterns in my own thinking and behavior. It helped me identify the PMDD. So anyway, and that's another thing. When you reach out for help, neurotypical people like to vent and then be validated. And I think that sometimes we should ask people, would you like to vent or would you like solutions? Because somebody did that with me one time and I thought it was fantastic. And I was like, both, please. So I think that we should incorporate that into our conversations when those kinds of when life's problems come up. So when I talk to someone and I vent, and then they do that silly validation thing where you know they're full of it and they're still saying it anyway. Yes, you're right. Your feelings are valid. Like there's some kind of freaking mindless drone spouting whatever kind of nonsense they picked up on this week's. So they pick up on whatever the thing is from this week's pop psychology on social media, trendy stuff. Then they just regurgitate whatever they heard. And I'm like, I know damn well that wasn't valid because I experienced that thought in my own head and I heard what I said and I thought to myself, that sounds stupid. So whenever I did my video journals, I could say stuff to myself, listen to myself, and then be like, wow, that was really, that was really some uninsightful stuff there. And then I could, on the flip side, find things that did make sense and focus on those and eliminate the other. Because what would have been helpful for me is if someone could have helped me sort my thoughts into their Harry Potter houses. So, the house of intrusive thoughts, and then the house of useful thoughts, and then past and future go in the same house because you can't do anything about either one of those things. You can only do something about the present. So anyway, this has been a long intro, but I plan to go into more detail about what I did for myself to fix some of my issues. Obviously, they're not ever all going to go away. And then things that other people can do to help, like both of those things. Help is very specific, individualized care. So I would just tell what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and then hopefully, though, it can help somebody out there. And if it can make one person feel less alone, then that's absolutely worth it for me, because feeling alone in my experiences was the worst part of that depression. Like, I don't mind being by myself. I'm fine with my own company, but when I felt like I was completely alone on this earth in my experiences, like nobody had experienced anything that they could relate to, like totally unrelatable to everyone, that was the worst part of it. And one thing that being part of this online community has it's been such a great thing for me, because now I know that there are other people out there who share my same experiences, and I feel so much less alone because of all of you. So thank you.